Hello and welcome to a new episode of our podcast, Das FilmSprechzimmer, which translates to the movie talking room. Today we're welcoming Jessica Hargrave, the producer of the new documentary Good Night Oppy that's going to premiere on November 23rd on Prime Video. Here you go. Jessica, first of all, congratulations for winning 5 awards at the 7th Annual Critics' Choice Documentary Awards. How was that?
That was truly a surprise. I mean, a very happy surprise, but it was not something that we expected, but it felt like a really wonderful feeling to have been recognized by so many critics for the film. It's that film, we love it so much that we were so excited to have it recognized.
For someone who has no idea, what can you tell us? What is this documentary about?
Sure. Good Night Oppy is about a rover, a robot that was sent to Mars and was expected to live for 90 days, but lived for 15 years. And it's really about the relationship formed between the scientists and engineers on Earth and with each other and with the rover millions of miles away. So it's really about the emotion and the ingenuity that helped keep her alive for so long.
How did the idea of making a documentary about rovers on Mars come to you guys? I mean, that's probably not something that you think of so like that.
No, it's unusual. I mean, usually, not surprisingly, our films normally follow humans, and they're normally the subjects of our documentaries, and they're humans who are going through some remarkable situation for some reason, and we'll follow that story. And so this was very different because the main character is not a human, and also we started the project after the mission had ended. And so both of those things were unusual for us, but it was brought to us by our partners who are Film 45 and Amblin, Steven Spielberg's company, who's our partner on it as well. And we realized that despite it being an unusual story, it was still a remarkable story and still something that we wanted to tell. And we had the great fortune of the fact that NASA was our partners, as they are our partners as well. And they had recorded a lot of video footage from the beginning of the mission. So if we had tried to do it all, looking back, it would not have been the same project, but they had actually filmed in the mission control room from the very beginning of the project. And they were willing to let us use that footage in the film.
The NASA was on board from the very beginning. You didn't have to get the NASA to be part of this documentary, right?
Well, so the idea didn't originate with them. It did originate with Film 45 and Amblin, and then they brought us on board. And then we approached with the team. We approached NASA and said, "This is what we want to do. And would you be open to that?" They get a lot of requests, so we were fortunate that they aligned with what we wanted to do with the project, the theme of our story, and that they were willing to partner with us because it's a lot of work for them too, and so they don't just partner with anybody. They are selective about the projects that they'll do, but once they partnered with us, they were fully on board. And so that meant giving us access to that archival material, to the video footage shot over the years, also helping us set up interviews with the people who worked on the project. And that, was really what really brought the emotion to the project and really brought the themes to the project, is the scientists and engineers telling the story themselves. And they're all very busy, but they all wanted to take part because this mission had meant so much to them. But NASA helped facilitate that and also helped facilitate us getting data from the mission because we could use that data. We partnered with another partner, Industrial Light and Magic, George Lucas's company. They do Star Wars. They do all these amazing projects, and they partner with us to do visual effects for the film. And the way that they did those visual effects, we wanted to really transport the audiences to Mars. And to do that, ILM created as photorealistic a Mars as they could using the photos that the rovers had taken, which there were hundreds of thousands of photos. They have 9 cameras on them. So there's photos taken every single day, and all of those are documented. But then NASA also maintains a lot of data about sunrise and sunset and the level of dust in the sky and the atmosphere. And so they would give us that data as well, which then ILM would use when they were creating the Mars that we show in the film. So there was one question that I actually had. So part of everything that we see on Mars, obviously, is like CGI or visual effects.
Yes. Those were not documentary parts.
So it's
except that they work with the documentary part.
right, exactly. So it's based on the actual data and the actual photos. And we tried to make sure that we were always, I mean, that's one of the things that ILM, they had never done that before. So it was a challenge for them. They said, we've made Mars before, but normally when we make Mars, we, you know, just do whatever we want. Like we think this would look cool here and this would look cool here. And that's not the way we wanted to do it. We wanted to really have it based on where the rovers were in that part of the mission, what the rovers were seeing. I mean, some parts of Mars aren't that exciting, right? It's just like a lot of big red rocks. And that's what you see in the film, because that's what the rovers were seeing, you know, just a lot of big red rocks. And they would use those rocks and use them to create the CGI version of that.
So while I was watching the movie, I was thinking, oh my gosh, this is like 15 years of material for you guys as as documentaries. You have our filmmakers. You have to watch through all this. How take us with you through the journey. That must have been exhausting, and to know what parts are really, really good, emotional, that we're gonna take and use in the movie.
It's a great question, because it was a huge task and we had the biggest team we've ever had working on it, because there was so much footage. And so, you know, NASA, as I said, is great about recording all this and keeping all of this. And it's pretty organized, but it's also not like, it just says maybe a date on it's, you know, it's VHS tapes, a lot of it. And it would just say the date that it was filmed, if that, you know. And so we'd have to get the tapes from them. And then we had a whole team of what we call loggers, people who log the footage, who watch the footage and put markers in and make notes. And they would find those moments that you're talking about where you could pull out that really contributed to the story, and then let us know. But so you don't get a tape that says really great ABBA SOS scene. You know, you just get a tape and someone's got to find it and then put it together into a really great ABBA SOS scene. And sometimes those loggers would spend days, you know, on a couple of science meetings, and they would be like, you know, exhausted by the end, just having watched. There's so much footage of people just sitting at computers, but you can't skip it, because you don't know when in that moment you're going to find, or when you might find that moment within that larger picture of footage. So it was all watched down. It was all noted. They had this really amazing organizational system to keep track of it. And then also you can go back into it. And it was like, okay, we want to find more of this one moment. Where do we find it? And it was all tracked once we'd watched down the footage.
I do really want to talk about something that you've already mentioned.
Sure.
That was very significant for me as a viewer. So because you made me feel for Rover, I cried so many times watching the movie. And tell us a little bit, how do you make the audience care about a machine?
It's something we talked a lot about in the edit room, because we wanted to be sure that that wasn't coming from us as the filmmakers. So we wanted that to actually come from the scientists and engineers. And we had a preconceived notion when we were starting to do, I did dozens of pre-interviews before we actually filmed anything. And when I was going into these interviews, you know, I knew that I would be doing pre-interviews with geniuses, with very smart people who are scientists and engineers. And my understanding of that was that they would be really academic, really rational thinkers, really black and white about the way that they answered my questions. And I was shocked, because all of them were so emotional. That was the word that came to mind after every single interview, was the emotion, and that they were all such great storytellers, and that they weren't just giving me this black and white academic answer. They were really talking about their own lives and how their own lives were impacted and how they intertwined with their work. And everyone kept doing that. And it made us realize, you know, of course, the logline is a great logline, but the mission meant so much to the team. And for so many of them at the end of it, or some people had moved on during the mission, you know, they go on to something else. And this was, some of them would say this was therapeutic for me, because it's like a loss that you hadn't properly grieved. And so they were finding this conversation to be a way to properly grieve the loss. And so that's really where all of that feeling came from. And we would only want it to be, you know, we want them to say it. So when they talk about how their lives were affected, it's in their own words, you know. And then I think a lot of what we feel as an audience, you know, and putting myself as an audience member too, is the connection with the humans too. Like, we're feeling what the humans are feeling. We feel this affection for the robot because the humans feel that affection for the robot.
your movie Good Night Oppy will premiere on Amazon Prime on November 23rd. What is your hope for the movie? What's your hope for Oppy?
I hope that people take away I feel like for especially for an adult audience, I do hope that young people will watch the film, but I feel like for an adult audience, I hope that they're transported back in a way to some of those feelings that we had when we were kids. I think that's part of this film's I don't know, the element that I hope will appeal to people too is as adults, sometimes we're not as inspired anymore. We don't really have this sense of wonder and awe when we're in our daily lives because you just lose it. As kids, you have it a lot. So I certainly hope kids feel it, but I really hope that adults can feel that feeling again and see what's possible when people dream big and work together to do an impressive and what seemingly impossible thing.
Thank you so much. I really, really enjoyed the movie. And as I said, I felt like it was a character and it was not a machine or a thing. So thank you for that.
Oh, great.
I had
Thank
a really
you so
wonderful
much, Melanie.